Random House Audiobooks presents The Fortune of War by Patrick O'Brien.
The Fortune of War. The warm monsoon blew gently from the east, wafting HMS Leopard into the bay of Pulau Batang. She had spread all the sails she could to reach the anchorage before the tide should turn, and to come in without discredit, but a pitiful show they made. Patched, with discoloured heavy-weather canvas, next to stuff so thin it scarcely checked the brilliant light, and her hull was worse. A professional eye could make out that she had once been painted with the Nelson checker, that she was a man of war, of fourth rate, built to carry 50 guns on 2 full decks. But to a landsman, in spite of her pennant and the dingy ensign at her mizzen peak, she looked like an unusually shabby merchant ship. And although both watches were on deck, gazing earnestly at the shore and breathing in the heady scent of the Spice Islands, the Leopard's crew was so sparse that the notion of her being a merchantman was confirmed. Furthermore, a casual glance showed no guns at all, while the ragged figures on her quarterdeck could hardly be commissioned officers. These figures all gazed with equal intensity down the bay to where the flagship rode, and beyond it to the spreading white house that had been the Dutch governor's favourite wet-season residence. A Union flag flew over it at present. As they gazed, a signal ran up on a second flagstaff to the right. "They desire us to heave out the private signal, sir, if you please," said the signal midshipman, his telescope to his eye. "Make it so, Mr. Weatherby, together with our number," said the captain, and to his first lieutenant, "Mr. Babington, round to when we are abreast the point and start the salute." The Leopard glided on, the wind singing gently in her rigging, the warm water whispering down her side. She was abreast of the point. She came smoothly to the wind, and her single carronade began to speak. 17 feeble puffs of smoke, and 17 little bangs. When the last faint yelp had died away, the flagship began her deep, full-throated reply, and at the same time another hoist ran up on shore. "Captain, repair to flag, if you please, sir," said the midshipman. "Barge away, Mr. Babington," said the captain, and walked into his cabin. His full-dress uniform was laid out on his cot, scrubbed and brushed. As he put it on, he broke into a sweat. Then, hearing the voice of his steward, raised in blasphemous, whining fury, "Killick! Killick there! What's amiss?" "Which it's your scraper, sir, your #1 scraper. The Wombat's got at it." "Then take it away from him, for God's sake." "I dursn't, sir, for fear of tearing the lace." "Now, sir," cried the captain, striding into the great cabin, a tall, imposing figure. "Now, sir," addressing the Wombat, one of the numerous body of marsupials brought into the ship by her surgeon, a natural philosopher. "Give it up directly. Do you hear me there?" The Wombat stared him straight in the eye, drew a length of gold lace from its mouth, and then, deliberately, sucked it in again. "Pass the word for Dr. Maturin," said the captain, looking angrily at the Wombat, and a moment later, "Come now, Stephen, this is coming it pretty high. Your brute is eating my hat." "So he is, too," said Dr. Maturin. But do not be so perturbed, Jack. It'll do him no harm at all. His digestive processes—" At this point, the Wombat dropped the hat, shuffled rapidly across the deck, and swarmed up into Dr. Maturin's arms, peering into his face with a look of deep affection. "Well, I can keep it under my arm, together with my reports," said the captain, picking up a bundle of papers and carefully fitting them round his gold-laced hat to conceal the tear. "What now, Mr. Hollies?" "A barge alongside, if you please, sir." The Leopard, in fact, possessed no barge, nothing more than a little clinker-built jolly-boat, patched and pieced until scarcely an original plank was to be seen. It was rated barge for the occasion, but it was so small that the captain's barge men, once 10 of the most powerful Leopards, amounted to no more than 2, his coxswain, Barrett Bondon, and an able seaman by the name of Place. Still, this was the Royal Navy, and the jolly-boat, like the Leopard's deck, had been sanded and holystoned to an unearthly lustre.
"Aubrey!" cried the Admiral, rising as the captain was showed in and taking him by the hand. "Aubrey, by God, I'm glad to see you. We've given you up for dead."
The Admiral was a stout, thick-set sailor with a Roman emperor's face that could, and often did, look very forbidding, but now it was suffused with pleasure.
"By God, I am glad to see you. As soon as you was hull up, I recognised the horrible old Leopard. I sailed her in '93. The horrible old Leopard, come back from the dead, and tolerably clawed about, I see. What have you been at?"
"Here are all my letters, reports, returns, and statements of condition, sir," said Jack Aubrey, laying his papers on the table. "I'm truly sorry they're so tedious long, and I'm truly sorry to have taken such a time in bringing you the Leopard, and in such a state at that."
"Well, well," said the Admiral, putting on his spectacles, glancing at the heap, and taking them off again. "Better late than never, you know. Just give me a brief account of what you've been at, and, I'll look through the papers later."
"Why, sir, as you know, I was directed to come out by way of Botany Bay to deal with Mr. Bligh's unfortunate situation there. Then, at the last moment, it was thought fit to put a number of convicts aboard, and I was to carry them out as well. But these convicts brought the jail fever with them, and when we were about 12 degrees north of the line and becalmed for weeks, it broke out in a most shocking fashion. We lost more than 100 men, and it lasted so long I was obliged to bear away for Brazil, for provisions, and to land the sick. Then, a few days out of Recife, and shaping our course for the Cape, we fell in with a Dutch 74, the Waakzaamheid, and being so short-handed and outgunned, I avoided an engagement. But she ran us down to 43 degrees south, the wind rising and a very heavy following sea. But by getting hawsers to the mastheads and starting our water, we kept ahead, and a shot from our stern chasers brought her foremast by the board, so she broached to and went down."
"Did she? By God! Well done indeed. Oh, I heard you'd sunk her, but could scarcely credit it. No word of the circumstances. Well done indeed. Give you joy of it with all my heart, Aubrey," he said, shaking Jack's hand again. "Chloe? Chloe there!" raising his voice and directing it through a partially open door.
A slim, honey-coloured young woman appeared. She was wearing a sarong and a little open jacket that revealed a firm and pointed bosom. Captain Aubrey's eyes instantly fixed upon this bosom. He swallowed painfully. He had not seen a bosom for a very long while indeed. The Admiral called for champagne. It came at once.
"Well, here's to you, Aubrey, and your victory. Well, it ain't every day a 50-gun ship sinks a 74.
Now, you're very kind, sir, but, I'm afraid what I have to tell you next is not so pleasant. Having started all our water, bar a ton or so, I stood south and east for floating ice. There was no point in beating back 1,000 miles to the Cape, and I hoped to push straight on to Botany Bay. We found the ice further north than I had expected. But most unhappily, sir, the weather grew thick, and then, in the fog, we stuck, stern first upon an ice mountain, beat off our rudder, and started a butt under the larboard run. The leak gained prodigiously, in spite of fothering sails, and it was then, sir, that the guns were obliged to be thrown overboard, together with everything else we could come at." The Admiral nodded, looking grave. "The people behaved better than I had expected. They pumped until they could not stand. But when the water was well above the orlop, it was represented to me that the ship must settle, and that many of the people wished to take their chance in the boats. I told them we must try one more fothering sail, but meanwhile I should have the boats hoisted out and provisioned. But I very much regret to say, sir, that a short while after this, some hands broke into the spirit room, and that was the end of all order. The boats left in a deplorable condition. May I ask, sir, whether any of them survived?" "Oh, the launch reached the Cape. That's how I knew about the Dutchman, but I have no details. Tell me."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?